Clear skies, chirping birds, and a gentle breeze, perfect for the first adventure of the fall. With a mighty yawn and a mightier hunger, our little adventurer wobbles out of bed towards her fire pit. A quick spark to warm the water, and breakfast is underway. Some sifted salt from the cave in the hillside, potatoes and carrots fresh out of her garden, and the borrowed truffles from the boars on the outskirts of the forest, all served with bread she'd left out to rise with the sun. Her hearty morning meal wafts through the air for only a moment. She's found it's best not to let the other denizens of the lands get too good a smell, especially that minotaur who might just as soon eat her up. A handful of berries and nuts in her bone leaf and twine backpack, and she's off to the caverns. Last time she heard a lovely low chiming bouncing through the tunnels, and this time she was determined to find it. The thought of spelunking all through the evening filled her with excitement, but that journey would have to come after the journey to the cavern itself. The smooth, round rock-laden entrance lies hidden beyond a wall of water tall enough to touch the clouds and bring them down around the hill leading up to it. Those same clouds, plucked from the sky, love to wander around the dense brush, tree trunks, and mossy rocks that surround the crashing curtain and the river leading away from it. Before any of that, there's the small, treeless prairie, home to a peaceful community of deer, goats, living plants and trees, moles, slimes, boars, bears, wolves, and all the other critters and creatures of the lands, and occasionally other little goblins too. It's a sacred spot that the spirits of the hills would like to keep carefree and worryless, much to the disappointment of that last group of residents. What can she say? Harmless mischief is too much fun, and she'll be the first to say how harmless it all is. Today's quest was too important, though, so she'd have to control herself as she made her way through. All those wondrous little worlds are just downstream from her cozy camp. She grabs a log of soft driftwood and a leafy twig and begins to gently bob along towards the first half of her grandest adventure yet. A majestic herd of fluffy, pillowy clouds dance through the sky as the easy rocking from the makeshift boat leads her along. Hundreds of stories play out in her mind as the clouds act out play after play above her. With the hum of life getting closer, she thanks the clouds for helping her pass the time and dips the twig into the water. The leaves rustle and the thin wood quietly squeaks as the now waterlogged twig eases her and her trusty vessel to a stop. With the lakeside to her left and the rolling prairie straight ahead, she made her first steps towards the waterfall. She wasn't one to hang around these peaceful hills too often, though she did make an effort during this time of year. From the beautiful colors that the nymphs, fairies, plants, and ints sported to the freshly shined antlers of the bucks, there was so much natural beauty blossoming at this time of year. All that and the newly fluffy coats from the fur-swaddled animals made it hard not to suddenly, and unquestionably by accident, find herself in possession of an unimportant little trinket of beauty. The crisp, cool air of early autumn added to the uplifting lightness of the day and helped distract her from those trinkets. She jumps from group to group, shortly greeting everyone and taking in the energy of this little village. Some members of the ecosystem are less than overjoyed to see her round, green, always smiling face, but others love her company. The rams and ewes were always her favorite, and she seemed to be theirs too. They were so understanding of her enjoyment of goodies and were happy to share in anything they didn't need. As she offered some of her berries, she told them about the wonderful cave she was heading to and the music she hoped to find within. Back and forth, story for story, the small family of sheep and their little goblin friend spent the noontime talking, laughing, and enjoying some treats. Though they had already courteously gifted a wool necklace years previously, they had yet another gift. They offered some overgrown horns that their friend had to lose, which they fashioned into a headband for her. She ecstatically put it on and rushed over to a small puddle to admire the smooth, hard horns she now had. There, looking back at her, was a little goblin ram with long curving horns, a tufted mane, and the rib-caged straps of her bone backpack. Now nothing could stop her from finding those calling cavern tunes. After a non-stop stream of thank yous, she said goodbye to her best friends and sprinted towards the tree line. As the bustling prairie gave way to the quiet forest of moss, bramble, and bushes, she slowed to a gentle walk. The canopy cover and stream-borne mist created an almost cold, damp air that she'd much rather slowly float through and breathe in. Each step of her stride was met with a soft, lush mat of moss, grass, and soil. The edge of the forest was home to a serenity unlike anywhere else. The rhythmic droning splashes of free-falling water onto stone, while peaceful in its own right, couldn't come close to the stillness that this brook offered, especially in the snow-kissed wintertime. She slowly drifted along until meeting a familiar old tree with a burl-gnarled trunk. It seemingly existed for her to take a moment and let the world watch over her. After an all-too-short pause and the spotting of a patch of tasty-looking berries, nuts, and wild greens, she hopped off the tree and headed onward. Wasn't long after the break that she was at the foot of the waterfall. She decided to stop for a quick meal from what she picked and refill her bird-bone canteen, taking in one last moment of daylight before she ventures beyond the water and into the caverns below. Along the left side of the river was a smooth stone path that led into the cliffside and behind the cascading stream. The heavy crashes echoed off the back stone wall and created a steady, tangible melody. It always called to her, no matter how far into the labyrinthian caverns she went. After taking a moment to shout her heart out and listening to the echo quickly fade into the water, she headed beyond the opening. As the daylight faded out of sight, the underground light's guidance would help her. The caves were always bustling with luminous moths, fireflies, glowing moss, and occasional dimly shining crystals. The lights used to be her favorite aspect of the caves, but the mysterious music has become her greatest calling to this underground world. She listens carefully as she creeps along the branching paths in front of her, and she watches out for the little cairn creatures she made for herself. First was the wide olivine toad that seems to have grown some small moss buds along its speckled green and black back. The first stretch of the tunnels were always damp and filled with moss, mushrooms, and any soft grass brave enough to grow in the dimly lit caves. Second was the soft and powdery talc rock moth that she built within the crossroads of tunnels that many creatures call home. Her favorite little friend had hit it off quickly with the dozens of families of moths that already lived around it. At first glance, you might miss the cairn as just another pile of rocks covered with cute, fluffy friends, but her keen eyes knew what they signaled. A short stop to pet the fuzzy companions and to ask a few to join to help light the way, and her trek into the unknown began. From this spot, she could faintly hear the symphony. It was the lightest drumming her ears could hear, but she knew she was on the right path. The last few times she wasn't able to go much further than this, but with the help of her bioluminescent crew, the herb-steeped water in her bird bone, and the snacks in her pack, she knew today was the day. It was the winding, crisscrossing braid of trails that all offered echoing note after note that would take so long to figure out. She could walk down a tunnel, through a water basin-carved clearing, along a steep drop-off, and suddenly she was back to where she was earlier. What felt like hours went by, as she kept constantly arriving and re-arriving at one wondrous underground marvel after another. She had no idea where the drums that tapped out that luring, resonant sound were, and worse yet, she feared she was lost. She was certain the hum of low, ringing notes was closer than ever before, but she was completely turned around. Worrying was the last thing she needed to be doing, so she plopped down in an alcove along the side of a ravine and took a break. She cleared her mind with slow, controlled breaths, sips of her brew, a few berries for her and her fuzzy guiding lights, and their reassuring nuzzles. Lying in this crystal-lined outcropping, she outlined her path in the dirt and silt to get an idea of where she was. A battle map sprawled across the glittering floor, and, with guidance from her war counselor Moths, the way back struck her. Excited by this revelation, she bounced to her feet, gathered everything up, and took off to see if she was right. A short journey of backtracking and a strong sense of accomplishment later, she was more confident than ever about finding that endless music. Once she returned to her makeshift war room, she sat back down and got to building. Using the shining crystals, silt, and slate of the alcove, she constructed a cairn of a beetle to empower her for the road ahead and remind her of the path back. Now, with a little more caution and thought, she followed her ears while watching the shapes of the rock rooms around her. She paid attention to every last detail and began to understand how the tantalizing music was flowing through the caverns. This attentiveness and understanding carried her beyond those hours of baffled circling into lands filled with reverberant sound. Blazing a path she was sure to remember, the music got stronger and louder and all-encompassing until she discovered a stonework concert hall. A beautiful subterranean rainforest with a ceiling of crystal stars that streamed water down like rain onto the stone trees and mossy mushroom underbrush. The water cascades down onto perfectly shaped hollow stones that float like lilies on the shifting lake within. A whole world unlike anything else she'd seen in the caverns emanating before her, belting out melodies into the channels around it. On the water's edge closest to her, a small pool of water pulled away from the lake. It sloshed and flowed until a form eventually stood up, looking exactly like her, staring exactly at her, and waving. She cautiously stepped over the moss hillside towards the watery version of her that just formed from the lake. The water rolled gently within and created a round, blue, squishy form of what she always saw looking back from the water. There was a silence between them, the same silence as the cave opening behind the waterfall, until in that same resonant hum, the form began talking to her. She was amazed and wonderstruck as this watery ram goblin told her who they were and all the stories of the caves. They talked about how water and time is all it takes to make this underground world, and she told them about the effects they had on the world above. It only took a moment for the two to begin talking as if they'd always known each other. She introduced her new water friend to the fluffy fellows she brought with her, and the five of them shared the evening. The stationary twinkling crystal stars above her conveyed no sense of time, so she could only guess it was the evening. A whole lifetime worth of stories, jokes, and joy filled the space and combined with the water's song to make a more beautiful sound than any of them had ever experienced. Eventually it was time to go, though all of them promised to meet again soon. Much like her family of rams in the prairie, her new cavern family had many wonderful moments to share ahead. As the adventuring crew said their goodbyes to the water, the fluid form dashed off and brought back a flat, hollow music stone for her to take back. After making room in her bag by sharing what was left of her forest pick goodies, she slid the smooth, heavy stone into her backpack and headed out. A friendly wave and a gentle splash, and the form went back into the lake as the adventurers set off. First, greeting the glimmering crystal beetle in the alcove where she calmed herself and regained the confidence to adventure. Second, meeting the rest of the moth families and saying goodbye to her guiding friends whom she couldn't have experienced today without. Third, petting the soft, damp frog and breathing in the first of the forest's cool air. She let the waterfall's roars guide her the rest of the way up to the surface. Finally, the long journey home, which was guided by lustrous starlight and a glimmering full moon. It didn't take too much time to get back to her camp, though she wished it would have taken longer. It would have given her more time to soak in the adventure she went on today, feel the air against her new horns, hear the ghostly sound that wind made through her water drum, and once again look up at those floating clouds acting out their stories. Even with the added time of walking upstream to camp, it felt like she was home too soon. With another small fire, a nighttime garden stew, and a new bowl of yeast set out for tomorrow's breakfast, she got ready to rest. She could only begin to imagine the dreams she'd have tonight. She could only hope they'd be as magical as the day she just had. As she went to pat the fire out, she felt a drop of water. Looking up, it seemed the clouds had a new play in mind, but tonight it would be a musical. She scampered off to her bag and set the melodic rock under a few of the taller plants in her garden so the raindrops could hit just the right spots. That night she had better sleep than she knew was possible thanks to that gorgeous music she found and was gifted with today. Now every rainfall reminded her to go back and visit her friends in that dazzling world behind the waterfall.